Hi, welcome to the 14-day weather forecast. Things have been mixed recently. In places there have been some torrential downpours. So, are there any signs of it turning more settled during the coming days? Well, for once, the answer to the question is a resounding yes. At least that's what I think. I'm going to begin by taking a look at the view across Europe and the North Atlantic. This sequence starts at 15 GMT, Tuesday the 13th of July. It's using data from the Canadian model. At the outset, there are one or two showers dotted around, but it's a mainly dry picture. That sets the theme for the coming days because high pressure will be building northeastwards from the Azores towards the UK. And by the weekend, it's expected to be centred pretty much slap bang over us. You can see here, 18 GMT, Sunday the 18th of July. Into the early part of next week, one or two changes start to take place. The high pressure on this sequence is drifting eastwards, and if we look down to the southwest, there's an area of low pressure just possibly starting to have some influence. Nonetheless, I think at this point, with winds coming off continental Europe, if anything, temperatures would be rising even further. So just to take a look at 2 metre temperatures, I'm going to use a couple of charts from the GFS model. That's one which is run in the United States. The chart here is for Wednesday the 14th of July. You can see maximum values widely in the low to mid-20s Celsius. Some of the highest temperatures there in northeastern Scotland. Jumping ahead, Sunday the 18th of July, temperatures have been rising. And if you look down towards the London area, 29 Celsius has been forecast. That's interesting because GFS often undershoots by a couple of degrees. Therefore, if it's correct, we could record 30 Celsius officially in the UK for the first time this summer. I think even if it isn't reached on Sunday, there's a realistic chance of it happening on Monday or Tuesday as that continental flow brings even warmer air across the UK. Rainfall, well, not a great deal to say with high pressure being the dominant feature. This is for days 0 to 5. It's generated using the GFS model. Basically, it's a dry picture, just a little bit of rain shown in places. Nonetheless, as I say, it's predominantly settled. So how do the deterministic models stack up against each other at 1 week ahead? Are they all showing something similar or are there big discrepancies? GFS, Tuesday the 20th of July. This has the high pressure centred really just to the west-northwest of the UK, and there is cooler air moving down its eastern flank. So I think temperatures would be highest in the west. The further east you head, the cooler it would be. Nonetheless, it's a pretty settled scenario. Looking at the ICON model, that's the German model, at the same time. High pressure here centred a little bit further east, so temperatures, at least in the southern half of the United Kingdom, would be higher. Again, though, it's predominantly settled. The European ECM, that has high pressure centred a little bit further north. The area of low pressure to the southwest just starting to have an influence possibly. Nonetheless, for most of the country, it would be a dry and very warm picture. Just that risk of showers maybe starting to feed into the southwest. Looking at the UK Met Office model, here the high pressure is oriented slightly differently. It's to the northeast of the UK, and low pressure to the southwest there also beginning to have some influence. What this would be leading to is very warm or hot weather in much of the UK, but with that low pressure just to the southwest there, a growing risk of thundery showers, I would think, developing in southwestern England, and maybe later on those would become more widespread as that low pressure edged in towards the UK. But all in all, taking those deterministic models as a whole, the general theme from them is for high pressure to be the key player at 1 week ahead. Dry weather in most of the UK, temperatures warm to hot, just depending on how the high pressure is oriented towards the UK and whether or not we're pulling in that really warm air off continental Europe. What about week 2? Well, for that, I'll take a look at the ensemble data. Here's the GEFS 16-day chart for London. Top half shows the air mass profile, so temperatures about 1,500 metres above our heads. thick black line, the 30-year average. What we see in the short term is all the runs climb well above it, so it's going to become warmer, very warm, so high degree of confidence in that solution. But really the key focus here is on the second week of the forecast. So what we're seeing is a wider spread. There's an increasing range of solutions as we move further ahead. But the general trend is for 850 HPA air mass temperatures to be dipping slowly downwards. By the end of the period, so the 28th or 29th of July, the thick purple line, which is showing the average of all the runs in the ensemble, is just edging below the 30-year mean. Therefore, after very warm or hot conditions early in the period, we see air mass temperatures tapering away gradually, and by the end of the period, they're back to around about where they should be for the time of the year. Looking at the rain profile across the bottom, good confidence on it being very dry in the short term. You can see there aren't any rain spikes appearing there between the 15th and the 19th, so high pressure dominant. There's a high degree of confidence in that happening. From about the 19th, the 20th, the 21st of July, some rain spikes do start to show. There are not very many though. They do increase later on towards the end of the period, and there are one or two really big ones in there which would possibly suggest thundery conditions. All in all though, it doesn't look at all wet even later on. Just as I say, just an increasing risk of rain, but not a wet scenario. Looking at Glasgow, so we're jumping up to the northwest here. The air mass profile is very similar actually. It's slightly lower, the mean of the runs, because as you would expect to be the case with the warmth coming up from the south or southwest, it's generally not going to be as warm when you head further northwards. But nonetheless, relative to the 30-year average, it's well above it for much of the time. As we head through the last third of July, the trend is similar to what was shown on the London plot. Air mass temperatures are dipping gradually, and by around the 27th, they're back down towards the 30-year norm. The average of all the runs in the ensemble is back at the 30-year norm, but there are obviously warmer and cooler solutions in the mix, so even at that stage, it doesn't preclude it staying warm or very warm. It's just showing the likelihood, according to most of the runs in the ensemble, of a cooling trend returning. Looking at rainfall, very dry again for the first week really, but from around the 19th, 20th, so similar to the London chart, rain spikes begin to appear. Later on, there are certainly more rain spikes shown on this plot than there were on the London one. Nonetheless, it's not really a particularly wet picture at all. Just as I say again, I would summarise it by saying an increasing chance of rain later on. 2 metre temperature data table for London. So each of these columns shows the forecast maximums on each of the next 16 days from all of the runs in the GEFS ensemble. In the short term, it's this orangey brown and the darker orange. So these are the orangey browns are 21 to 25 Celsius. The dark oranges are 26 to 30 Celsius. Just to emphasise that point, that these are often a couple of degrees lower than the outcome. The forecasts tend to be very conservative. But what we're seeing in the short term is this warming trend, which I've discussed. But then as we go further forwards, the likelihood is that temperatures are taking a little bit of a dip. So the 2 metre temperatures are edging downwards. Nonetheless, with most runs staying in the average to above average categories, it's not looking cool. Just also worth highlighting that there are a number of runs a small number of runs in the pinky red category. That's 30 Celsius or over. So it's looking in the short term warm, very warm, possibly hot. Later on, dipping away a little bit at least. I think if we look at the Glasgow plot for 2 metre data table showing 2 metre temperatures, here the cooling trend is more noticeable. In the short term, it's the orangey brown, so 21 to 25 Celsius, so not as warm as in the southeast, of course. There are a few of the reddy orangey colours there, 26 to 30 Celsius, but as I say, the majority of runs are in this orangey brown category. And then going forwards, it's this lighter yellowy orange bucket which increases. That's the runs going for 16 to 20 Celsius. So quite a clear cooling trend showing later on. In fact, there are some runs in the yellow bucket, which are 11 to 15 Celsius, would be very cool if they were to verify. I think they're probably showing much more of an Atlantic influence returning. All in all, though, the trend varies for warm, very warm conditions relative to the average for the northwest of the UK in the short to medium term, then temperatures trending downwards later on. Rainfall plots, London data table. As I said, it looked, as we saw on the line graph, it was a dry storm in the short term. The light grey is runs which are forecasting no rainfall for the given time period. The dark grey showing small amounts of rain, with the purples, blues, greens going for larger, more significant rainfall. The summary here really is for dry conditions, very dry conditions in the short term, and then that increasing chance of rain as we go forwards into the last third of July, but not a wet picture. The comparable data table for Glasgow, if you remember on the line graph for Glasgow, there were more spikes appearing for the last third of the month, and that's apparent on this chart as well, on this plot. You can see there in the short term, lots of light grey, but that progressively decreases, and the dark greys increase, but also the greens, blues and purples increase later on. A greater risk of rain than in London, and a greater risk of more significant rain, so heavier falls of rain as well as more frequent falls. This is the postage stamp plot showing forecast rainfall for 27th of July. I'm showing it because it represents the output from all of the runs in the ensemble at that given time. They're called postage stamps because each of these little plots is like a stamp. And what we can see is a wide range of solutions. It's difficult to see these in detail because they are quite small, obviously, but the key thing is that fewer of the stamps show rain in the southern part of the UK than in the north. Nonetheless, a wide range of solutions at this range, 16 days ahead, and the possibility of rain anywhere, but the greater chance as you head further north and west. Surface level pressure scattered chart I thought was quite an interesting way of looking at the forecast for pressure. This is for Nottingham. In the short term, there's a very, very clear upwards trend to about 1,030 millibars. Really, all the runs are very tightly packed during the first 5 days or so of the forecast period. But then there's a clear downwards trend appearing, and there's a big, big spread of outcomes possible with the model runs going from about 1,025, 1,028 millibars down to as low as 995 millibars. Those are extremes at both ends of the ensemble, of course. But the key point really is that the downwards trend is very clearly marked. So again, it's supporting that suggestion of more changeable conditions returning later on in the forecast period. I think just one other thing that's quite interesting here is that in the short term, the runs are going up about 1,030 millibars, a little bit higher. Even at the top there, about 1,033. Then as we head forwards, there is a wider range of solutions, which is to be expected. But what I found interesting here was even though that range increases, none of the runs in the ensemble after about the 19th of July are going for pressure as high as in the short term, which is quite, I think, quite unusual, because you would expect at least one or two to be bringing in really high pressure further on. So I think that does point towards a reasonable confidence level of things becoming more changeable towards the end of July. So to summarise, week one, scattered showers early on will fade away, and it's expected to become warm or very warm. There is a chance of 30 Celsius being exceeded in the southern half of the UK, but that's not definite. Towards the end of the first week, as low pressure starts to approach from the southwest, there is a chance of showers returning. There's also what I've put as a low chance of it becoming cooler from the north towards the end of the period. That's the scenario which the GFS was showing, where high pressure was centered a little bit further northwest and cooler air was moving down its eastern flank. Most of the deterministic model runs and the ensembles are not really supporting that scenario. Week 2, high pressure probably declines, the risk of heavy and thundery showers increases, and there is a signal for temperatures to be dipping, with the warmest conditions probably in the south, where it may well stay warmer than the 30-year norm for much of the time. So there we have it. I think we're in for a summery period of weather, very warm, at least for a time, growing uncertainty later on, and just the chance there of it turning more changeable, particularly towards the end of the 14-day period. So thank you for watching this. I hope you found it useful and enjoyed it. If you did, then please remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons. Thanks now. Bye.